Out front tonight, Democratic Senator Chris Coons. He sits on the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. And good to have you with me, sir. So a White House official is telling CNN tonight that at this point, they don't believe there's enough evidence to convince Senate Republicans to remove Trump from office. That, of course, is what you and the Senate are going to have to vote whether to do or not. Have you talked to any of your Republican Senate colleagues today? What have they told you?
I have a number of friends in the Republican caucus in the Senate, and when I try to bring up the subject of the testimony of this week, the striking developments in the House, all of them have either changed the subject or simply said they'd really rather not talk about it. It is a very difficult, sensitive subject, and one where, frankly, it's been quite difficult to get anyone to concede that the president's defense stands in tatters after this week's testimony in the House.
Obviously, right. It had been that there was no quid pro quo, and then it was that there was hearsay that there was one. Obviously, both of those points now have been shown to be false. But to your point about how your colleagues, and I know these are people you know well, they're friends, they're people you respect. I want to play something Chairman Schiff said in his closing remarks today. He was comparing Trump to Nixon, and he was saying what Trump did is beyond anything Nixon did. And then he went on to say this, Senator.
The difference between then and now is not the difference between Nixon and Trump. It's the difference between that Congress and this one. Where are the people who are willing to go beyond their party, to look to their duty?
Senator, do you think those people exist?
Well, that's what I hope my Republican colleagues will be reflecting on over this Thanksgiving break, is how in our nation's history back in 1974, it was Republican senators like Howard Baker of Tennessee who put country over party, and having heard the kind of evidence against President Nixon that I think has now been presented against President Trump, went to him and said, you really should rethink whether you can survive a trial in the Senate. I don't see any movement like that among my Republican colleagues now. It's entirely possible they are having private conversations given the really devastating testimony this week in the House. But there's nothing that I've heard that suggests that sort of a change in heart or spirit in the other caucus this week.
Now, obviously, there are, some at the center of this who have not yet spoken. We've heard now from the president's mouth to Mr. Holmes' ears. Gordon Sondland's admitted, right? We've heard it all. But we haven't yet heard from John Bolton, right? The former national security advisor who was at the center of the testimony today. So what do you think should happen here when it comes to Bolton, to the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to the acting chief of staff, Mulvaney? Should the House try to get them to testify, or do you think it's time for them to drop the articles of impeachment, vote, send it to you all for you all to possibly have those interviews?
I think they should make every effort possible to demand testimony from a number of the most senior figures in the Trump administration who've been directly implicated. Ambassador Gordon Sondland's testimony yesterday was striking, was very clear that this was not just one phone call from President Trump to President Zelensky. This was an organized, coordinated campaign to serve the domestic political benefits of President Trump against his strongest domestic political opponent, former Vice President Biden, something that was, as Dr. Fiona Hill put it, a domestic errand that put our national security at risk. I do think they should make every effort to secure that testimony.
Even if
but
it
if they
takes
don't
this
succeed,
into the new year
they need to
in the House?
proceed.
I mean, do you think time?
I think.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think the time has virtually run out. They should make one more serious effort, but it's clear the president and his senior advisors so far have blocked all testimony by those who were in the room other than Gordon Sondland. And frankly, they should give them one more chance and move on.
So do you think Senate Democrats will be able to stop Republicans when this comes to you from, of course, Republicans being the majority in the Senate, just to make that clear to everybody? Would you be able to stop them from calling witnesses the Chairman Schiff blocked, like Hunter Biden, or could we see Hunter Biden testifying in a Senate trial?
It's entirely possible that rules for the conduct of the trial in the Senate will be passed by a bare majority. I hope not. Ultimately, during the Clinton impeachment, Republicans and Democrats were able to come to agreement about witnesses and where and how they testified and so forth. I do think it would be a complete farce to bring Hunter Biden in front of the Senate. The theory under which that's been advanced has been dismissed and disproven by every journalistic outlet that's investigated it, that's serious. And that's just another conspiracy theory of the sort that Dr. Fiona Hill today was dismissing in her testimony. So I hope they won't come to that, but it's entirely possible.
All right. Well, Senator Coons, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Erin. Good to be with you.